Jakob Reeves was elbow-deep in a hyperdrive coil when the ship's AI decided to share its opinion on his coffee habits. "I'm just saying." Arya's voice drifted through the engine bay speakers with that particular tone of artificial superiority. "Adding 17 sugar cubes to synthetic coffee defeats the purpose of calling it coffee." "It's 18, actually," Jakob muttered, wrestling with a particularly stubborn plasma coupling. "And I didn't ask for dietary advice from a computer that thinks optimal room temperature is subarctic. 22 degrees Celsius is perfectly reasonable for human habitation. Tell that to my frostbitten fingers." Jakob finally freed the coupling with a satisfying click. "Besides, if you're so concerned about my sugar intake, maybe you could requisition some real coffee beans instead of this recycled engine lubricant we call breakfast." The wandering fool operates on a salvage crew budget, not a luxury liner expense account. "Perhaps if you and Tors stopped betting the ship's funds on zero-G poker games." A proximity alarm cut through their argument, filling the engine bay with pulsing amber light. Jakob wiped his hands on his coveralls and made his way to the bridge, where Captain Tors was frowning at the sensor displays. "What have we got, Cap?" Jakob slid into the navigation station, noting the familiar debris patterns on the screen. The Kepler Rift was a graveyard of ships that had pushed their luck too far, trying to cut through the unstable quantum fields that made normal space travel a nightmare in this sector. "Distress beacon about 3 clicks off our starboard side." Tors, a grizzled woman whose scars told stories of 40 years in space, scratched her gray-streaked beard. "Signal's weak, probably been broadcasting for days." "That could be a trap," offered Hendricks from the weapons station. The young gunner had an unfortunate tendency to see pirates behind every asteroid, which wasn't entirely unreasonable given their line of work. "Could be a payday," Tors countered. "Arya, what's the scan showing?" "Single vessel, approximately 40 meters in length. Hull configuration suggests Cathara origin, though the energy signature is unusual." The AI paused, which in Jakob's experience meant it was processing something that didn't fit its usual parameters. "The ship appears to be heavily damaged but structurally intact. Life signs are inconclusive." Jakob raised an eyebrow. "Inconclusive how?" "There's definitely something biological aboard, but Cathara physiology registers differently on our sensors. It could be 1 survivor or 17, depending on whether they're conscious or in some form of metabolic suspension." "Cathara," Hendricks' voice jumped an octave. "Cap, those are the ones with the plasma weapons and the whole death before dishonor thing, right?" "Those are the ones with the pointed ears and the unfortunate habit of shooting first," Tors corrected. "Though to be fair, we usually do the same thing." She leaned back in her command chair, weighing options with the practiced ease of someone who'd made life-or-death decisions before breakfast more times than she cared to count. "Jakob, what's your read on their tech?" "From what I can see on sensors, their ships running on backup power may be less. Whatever hit them, they're not exactly in fighting condition." Jakob pulled up the detailed scans, noting the extensive hull damage. "Plus, there's something weird about their armor configuration. See this?" He highlighted sections of the vessel's outer hull. "That's not standard military plating. It's more like ceremonial, maybe diplomatic. Or maybe it's a really fancy trap designed to look non-threatening," Hendricks added helpfully. Tors snorted. "Hendricks, if the Cathara wanted to trap us, they wouldn't need to fake a distress call. They'd just decloak behind us and vaporize our engines before we knew what hit us." She stood, decision made. "We're going aboard. Full environmental suits, standard salvage protocols." "And if they wake up shooting?" Hendricks asked. "Then we'll be very polite about shooting back." Tors headed for the equipment lockers. "Jakob, you're with me. Your alien tech expertise might come in handy. Hendricks, you stay here and monitor communications. If this goes sideways, I want you ready to get us out of here fast." "Aye, Cap, try not to start an interstellar incident." No promises. The docking process took longer than usual, given that the Cathara ship systems were operating on minimal power. Jakob found himself impressed despite the circumstances. Their engineering was elegant in ways that human technology rarely achieved. Where human ships were built like sledgehammers, all brute force and redundant systems, this vessel felt more like a precision instrument. Their airlocks are still functioning, he reported as they sealed the connection. Atmospheres thin but breathable, gravities at about 80% standard. Life support. Functioning but barely. They've got maybe 6 hours before it fails completely. Jakob ran his scanner over the inner airlock door. No immediate signs of booby traps, but their security system is definitely monitoring us. Tors drew her sidearm, not quite pointing it at anything but keeping it ready. Let's make this quick then. The interior of the Cathara ship was nothing like the utilitarian corridors of human vessels. The walls curved in organic patterns, and what Jakob had initially taken for decorative elements revealed themselves to be functional components. Data conduits that pulsed with bioluminescent light, air recycling systems that looked more grown than built. Fancy, Tors murmured, though her weapon remained ready. They found her in what appeared to be a meditation chamber near the ship's center, though it doubled as some kind of command center. The unconscious figure was definitely Cathara. The pointed ears were a dead giveaway. But there was something almost familiar about her features. She was wearing armor that looked like it had been forged from liquid starlight, all flowing curves and subtle energy patterns. Is she alive? Tors kept her distance while Jakob approached with his medical scanner. Very much so. Unconscious, probably from some kind of neural feedback when her ship got hit, but her vitals are strong. Jakob paused, studying the readouts. Actually, they're remarkably strong. Whatever Cathara physiology is like, she's recovering faster than any human would. As if responding to his words, the woman's eyes opened. They were the color of deep space. Not quite purple, not quite blue, with flecks that seemed to shift like distant stars. For a moment she appeared disoriented, then her gaze fixed on Jakob with an intensity that made him step back. She spoke in accented but clear standard. "You're not what I expected to find in my dreams." Tors blinked. Dreams. The Cathara woman sat up slowly, her armor making soft harmonic sounds as it adjusted to her movement. When one's ship is dying in the void, the mind tends to wander to interesting places. Her eyes never left Jakob's face. Though I must say, hallucinating rescue by humans is either a sign of profound optimism or severe head trauma. Well, Jakob found himself saying, we prefer to think of ourselves as a pleasant surprise rather than a hallucination. For the first time, something that might have been amusement flickered across her features. Indeed. And yet here you are, very real and very. She paused, studying his face with an expression Jakob couldn't quite read. Very familiar. 3 days later, Jakob discovered that Lyrian Asheville had opinions about everything from quantum mechanics to the proper way to calibrate a plasma torch, and she wasn't shy about sharing them. "You're doing it backwards," she announced from where she sat cross-legged on the engine room floor, watching him work on her ship's damaged power coupling. Her armor had retracted to something resembling casual clothing, though it still shimmed with that odd internal light. "I've been fixing hyperdrive systems since before you were born," Jakob protested, then paused. "Wait, how old are you exactly?" "Old enough to know that reversing the polarity flow before checking the resonance frequency is an excellent way to create what humans so colorfully call a really big boom." She gestured toward his hands. "Also, I'm 63, which is barely adult by Cathara standards, so your assumption about my youth is both incorrect and slightly insulting." Jakob stared at her. "You're 63. Your species ages like fruit left in sunlight. It's rather sad, actually." She stood and moved to examine his work more closely. "Here, let me show you the proper sequence before you accidentally create a small star in your engine bay." "Arya, are you hearing this?" Jakob called out. She's critiquing my engineering. I find her assessment largely accurate, the AI replied cheerfully. Perhaps you should listen to the nice alien lady before you vaporize us all. Traitor! Lyrian's laugh was like silver bells caught in a gentle breeze. Your artificial intelligence has excellent judgment, though I must ask, why did you name it Aria? It seems rather melodic for a ship's computer. The previous owner was a musician, Tors explained, entering the engine bay with coffee for Jakob and some kind of Cathara nutritional supplement for their guest. Figured the name suited the personality. The personality is a generous term, Jakob muttered, accepting his coffee gratefully. Arya's more like a perpetually disappointed parent who happens to control life support. I heard that. Good, maybe you'll work on your attitude. Lyrian accepted her drink and took a cautious sip. Her eyebrows rose. This is actually quite good, what is it? Standard issue protein synthesis with added vitamins and minerals, Tors said. Nothing fancy. It tastes like starberries from my homeworld. How is that possible? Tors and Jakob exchanged glances. Lucky guess. Jakob offered. Your replicator analyzed my biological requirements and created something specifically suited to my palate, Lyrian realized. That's remarkably sophisticated for a salvage vessel. Don't tell anyone, Tors said. Bad for our reputation as disreputable scavengers. Your secret is safe with me, Captain Tors. Though I should warn you, I've been monitoring your communications. The Colonial Authority has been asking questions about ships in this sector. Questions with my species designation attached to them. Jakob's coffee suddenly tasted bitter. What kind of questions? The kind that suggests someone reported finding a Cathara vessel. Lyrian's expression remained calm, but something flickered in her eyes. I suspect we'll have company soon, both human and otherwise. She was right. 2 days later, as they approached Meridian Point Station, Arya announced incoming traffic with her usual cheerful delivery of bad news. 3 ships approaching from different vectors. 1 Colonial Authority patrol vessel, designation CA-447. 2 smaller craft of unknown configuration, though their energy signatures suggest Cathara origin. Wonderful, Tors muttered. Everyone wants to say hello. The Cathara ships aren't military, Lyrian said from the navigation console, where she'd been helping Jakob plot their approach to the station. Those signatures belong to private vessels. Bounty hunters, most likely. Bounty hunters. Jakob looked at her sharply. What exactly did you do to attract that kind of attention? I existed while being Cathara in human space, she replied dryly. It's apparently a crime worthy of pursuit by multiple agencies. The docking at Meridian Point went smoothly enough, though Jakob noticed more security personnel than usual monitoring the arrivals bay. Lyrian had altered her appearance somewhat. Her pointed ears were now hidden beneath a flowing headwrap that made her look like any of dozens of near-human species that frequented the outer stations. Stick together, Tors advised. Find a public place with lots of witnesses until we cap'n usual table. Thanks, Stan. Bit of privacy would be appreciated. They'd barely settled into their booth when trouble found them. A group of Colonial Authority types in civilian clothes, though they might as well have been wearing signs that said government agents, approached their table with the kind of confident swagger that suggested they were used to people being intimidated by their presence. Afternoon, folks, the leader said, his smile containing approximately 0 warmth. Mind if we join you for a drink? Depends, Tors replied evenly. You buying? Funny lady, the man's eyes fixed on Lyrian. We're looking for someone. Cathara woman about this tall, pointed ears, probably traveling with humans. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Jakob felt Lyrian tense beside him, though her expression remained perfectly neutral. Cathara, he said, putting just the right amount of confusion in his voice. Aren't they the ones with the plasma weapons and the whole death before dishonor thing? That's them. The agent's smile became even less pleasant. Dangerous bunch. Anyone harboring one would be in serious trouble. Good thing we're just simple salvage workers then, Torres said. Nothing dangerous about pulling scrap metal out of dead ships. The confrontation might have ended there if one of the other patrons, a drunk cargo hauler with more credits than sense, hadn't chosen that moment to make a loud comment about knife-eared freaks and their unnatural technology. The remark was directed at no one in particular, just the kind of casual bigotry that flowed freely in frontier establishments, but Jakob saw Lyrian's jaw tighten. What happened next was a masterclass in controlled violence. Lyrian rose smoothly from her seat, walked over to the drunk hauler, and with movements too fast for the human eye to follow, had him face down on the bar with his arm twisted behind his back. "I beg your pardon," she said politely. "Could you repeat that? I don't think I heard you correctly." The bar erupted. Chairs flew, bottles shattered, and someone started shooting. In the chaos, Jakob grabbed Lyrian's arm to pull her toward the exit, but her sleeve tore on a piece of broken glass. For just a moment, he saw skin, and the unmistakable pattern of a scar that had been burned into her flesh with surgical precision. Then they were running, Torres shouting directions, as they fled through meridian points, twisting corridors with both colonial authority agents and newly arrived Cathara bounty hunters in pursuit. They took refuge in an abandoned maintenance shaft, breathing hard and listening to the sounds of their pursuers searching nearby passages. "Well," Lyrian whispered, "this is going splendidly." Jakob stared at her in the dim emergency lighting. "That scar on your arm, that wasn't from the ship crash." Her violet eyes met his, and for the first time since he'd met her, her composure cracked slightly. "No, it wasn't. Where did it come from?" She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "That scar is because of you." The abandoned mining facility on Kepler-7's outer moon smelled like rust and broken dreams, but it had the distinct advantage of being off everyone's sensor grid. Jakob sat on a corroded metal crate, staring at Lyrian across the dim chamber while Torres kept watch at the entrance. 8 years ago, Lyrian said quietly, "I was part of a research team studying quantum resonance patterns in ancient stellar formations. We discovered something remarkable in the Veil Nebula, evidence that previous civilizations had learned to manipulate space-time in ways we're only beginning to understand." "I remember the Veil Nebula mission," Jakob said, his stomach sinking. "Colonial Survey designated it a routine mapping expedition." "Routine?" Lyrian's laugh held no humor. "Yes, I suppose destroying a peaceful research station could be considered routine for your military. We were told it was a raider base. Intelligence showed weapon signatures, military installations. Your intelligence was wrong." Lyrian stood and began pacing, her movements sharp with old anger. "We had defensive systems, yes. Any deep space facility does. But we were scientists, Jakob. Archaeologists and physicists, studying ruins that were old when your species was learning to make fire." Torres appeared in the doorway. "Hate to interrupt, but we've got movement on the horizon. Looks like our friends found the mining complex." "How long do we have?" Jakob asked. 20 minutes, maybe less, they're being thorough." Lyrian moved to the chamber's single window, gazing out at the approaching lights. "You want to know about the scar? Your squadron leader ordered a full plasma barrage on what he believed was a weapons depot. It was actually our primary laboratory." She touched her ribs unconsciously. "I was trapped under debris when the building collapsed. The plasma burns went straight through the structural supports and into anyone unlucky enough to be in the way." Lyrian I. 7 people died that day, Jakob. 7 brilliant minds who could have changed how our species understand the universe. She turned back to him, and he saw tears reflecting in her eyes. "Do you know what we found in those ruins? Evidence of a civilization that achieved true interstellar harmony. Not the uneasy peace we have now, with its trade agreements and mutual defense pacts, but actual cooperation between different species working toward common goals." "I'm sorry," The words felt pathetically inadequate. I'm so sorry. Are you? Because your service record shows commendations for that mission. Medals for defending humanity against alien aggression. Jakob felt like the gravity had suddenly doubled. I was following orders. We all were. The intelligence reports were falsified. Lyrian's voice was flat. I've spent 8 years investigating what happened. Someone wanted that research destroyed, and they used your military to do it. Tors whistled low. Someone played both sides. Classic false flag operation. But who benefits from keeping our species apart? Jakob asked. The trade agreements, the cultural exchanges. Follow the money, Tors suggested. Or in this case, follow the weapons contracts. Peace is bad for business if you're in the business of selling guns. An explosion somewhere in the complex rattled the chamber walls. Their pursuers were getting creative with door locks. Time to go, Tors announced. Jakob, remember that courier ship we saw in the docking bay? The one with the suspiciously clean registry. You want to steal a ship, Tors, that's Tuesday, she suggested. Come on, kid, we've stolen bigger things than that. They made their way through the facility's maintenance tunnels, guided by Arya's remote sensors. The AI had managed to infiltrate the mining complex's automated systems and was providing running commentary on their pursuers' progress. Human agents have breached the main facility, Arya reported through Jakob's comm. Cathara hunters are approaching from the northwest entrance. Current trajectory suggests you'll all meet in a delightfully awkward confrontation in approximately 7 minutes. Any good news? Tors asked. The courier ship's security system is laughably inadequate. I've already begun bypassing its encryption. Also, it has an excellent espresso machine. Priorities, Lyrian murmured, but Jakob caught the hint of a smile. They reached the docking bay just as the first energy beams began lighting up the facility behind them. The courier ship was sleek and fast, built for discretion rather than cargo capacity. Tors had them aboard and launching before their pursuers realized what was happening. Where to? She asked as they cleared the moon's atmosphere. The neutral zones, Lyrian replied. If someone orchestrated the attack on my research station, they'll have left traces. Financial records, communication logs, supply requisitions. The kind of evidence that gets archived in places both our governments pretend don't exist. Jakob was studying the star charts when something occurred to him. Lyrian, if you've been investigating this for 8 years, why didn't you just present your findings to both governments? Surely they'd want to know about corruption in their own ranks. Would they? Think about it, Jakob. Admitting the attack was based on false intelligence would require acknowledging systemic failures in both militaries. It would mean explaining why no one questioned orders that resulted in the deaths of civilians. It would mean admitting that someone, somewhere, values conflict more than cooperation. She's got a point, Tors said from the pilot's seat. Politicians don't like admitting they made mistakes, especially mistakes that got people killed. So what's the plan? Jakob asked. We find evidence of this conspiracy, then what? Start our own intergalactic news service. I was thinking more along the lines of making the information impossible to ignore, Lyrian replied. Simultaneous broadcast to every major news network, military command, and political body in both human and Cathara space. Make it too public to cover up. Tors laughed. I like her style, though I should mention, the kind of places that keep those records aren't exactly tourist destinations. We're talking about criminal information brokers, black market data merchants, the kind of people who sell their own mothers for the right price. Sounds like my kind of neighborhood, Jakob said. I did grow up on a salvage ship after all. Your optimism is either inspiring or terrifying, Lyrian observed. I haven't decided which. Why not both? Jakob suggested. I find that works well for most situations. Their first stop was New Reno, a space station that existed in the gray areas between jurisdictions and specialized in facilitating transactions that couldn't happen in polite society. The gambling halls and pleasure districts were just the visible face of an economy built on information, favors, and services that governments preferred to pretend didn't exist. Remember, Torres advised as they approached the docking bay, in a place like this, everyone's running some kind of game. The key is figuring out which game they're playing before they figure out yours. Jakob nodded, though privately he wondered if they were walking into something far more dangerous than Torres realized. 8 years was a long time to keep a conspiracy quiet, which meant the people behind it had resources and connections that reached into some very high places. Still, as he watched Lyrian check her equipment with the methodical precision of someone who'd learned to be prepared for anything, he found himself oddly hopeful. Maybe it was naive, but he was starting to believe they might actually pull this off. Of course, that was before they discovered that their stolen courier ship was registered to one of the most notorious crime bosses in the neutral zones, and their arrival had triggered approximately 17 different automated bounties on their heads. Well, Lyrian said as proximity alarms began wailing, this should be interesting. The ancient Kithara archive on Theshan Prime looked like a crystal garden that had learned to think. Jakob stood before towering spires of living data storage, while elderly AI constructs drifted between them like luminous jellyfish, tending to memories that span millennia. Your poker face, Lyrian informed him quietly, is terrible. When the data merchant on New Reno asked for 50,000 credits for those shipping manifests, you looked like you'd swallowed a live plasma coil. I was calculating how many years of salvage work that represented, Jakob protested. Turns out it's roughly equivalent to my entire career earnings plus my theoretical retirement fund. Which is why Torres suggested we simply steal the information instead. Torres has a flexible relationship with property law, a useful trait in our circumstances. Lyrian approached one of the archive spires, her hand glowing with the same soft light as her armor. Though I must say, convincing that casino owner that we were undercover journalists investigating gambling fraud was inspired. The fake credentials were Arya's idea. Apparently, she's been cataloging human criminal behavior patterns for years. For research purposes only, Arya's voice drifted from Jakob's comm with suspicious innocence. The archive responded to Lyrian's touch, data flowing in streams of light between her fingers and the crystalline surface. Information cascaded across the spire's faceted sides, shipping records, communication logs, financial transfers spanning decades. There, she breathed, do you see it? Jakob studied the patterns emerging in the data stream. Financial transfers between shell companies, weapons shipments to both human and Kithara extremist groups, communication intercepts showing coordination between supposedly opposing factions. Someone's been playing both sides for years, supplying weapons to radicals, then profiting from the conflicts that result. Not someone, several someones. Lyrian's expression was grim. Look at these procurement records. Military-grade plasma weaponry sold to Kithara separatists, quantum disruptors sold to human colonial militias. The same distributors, the same funding sources. War profiteers, Tor's voice crackled through the comm from their ship in orbit. Classic racket. Create the problem, then sell the solution to both sides. The attack on your research station, Jakob realized. It wasn't just about destroying your work. It was about maintaining the status quo. Your discoveries about ancient cooperative civilizations would have made it harder to justify continued hostilities. 8 years of investigation, Lyrian said softly, and it comes down to simple greed. Don't sound so disappointed. Most terrible things do. Jakob began copying the data streams to portable storage units. The question is, what do we do with this information? We make it impossible to ignore. Lyrian's smile had a distinctly predatory quality. Arya, can you access both the Colonial Authority's emergency broadcast network and the Kithara Collective's priority communication channels simultaneously? Child's play, the AI replied. Though I should mention that unauthorized use of emergency systems carries significant legal penalties. Added to our tab, the simultaneous broadcast to both human and Cathara space went live 6 hours later. Every military command post, government facility, and major news network in both territories received the same data packet. Financial records, shipping manifests, intercepted communications, and enough evidence to implicate dozens of high-ranking officials in both governments. Think it'll work? Jakob asked as they watched the data transmission from their hiding spot in an asteroid field near the neutral zone border. The evidence is too comprehensive to dismiss, Lyrian replied, and too public to cover up. Within days, investigators from both sides will be demanding answers. The conspiracy falls apart when the people involved realize they can't trust each other not to talk. Plus, Torres added cheerfully, we made sure to include their personal financial information in the leak. Nothing motivates government prosecutors quite like tax evasion charges. Their comm system chimed with incoming messages, dozens of them from news agencies, government officials, and what appeared to be several very angry weapons dealers. Popular ladies, Jakob observed. Though I notice most of these messages include death threats. The price of fame, Lyrian said philosophically. Though I suspect our life expectancy would improve considerably if we were somewhere other than here when the shooting starts. About that, Torres interrupted. I've been monitoring official channels, and both governments have just issued joint bounties on our heads. Apparently we're now wanted for treason, espionage, and undermining interspecies stability. They forgot unlawful use of emergency broadcast systems, Arya added helpfully. So what's the plan? Jakob asked. Disappear into the frontier territories, change our names and open a mining operation on some backwater world. Actually, Lyrian said slowly, that's not a terrible idea. There are dozens of colony worlds in the outer rim where species doesn't matter as much as the ability to fix atmospheric processors and negotiate with sandworms. Sandworms? Local fauna. They're quite reasonable once you learn to speak their chemical language. 3 months later, Jakob was discovering that running a trading post on Kepler's edge involved far more paperwork than he'd expected. The planet sat at the intersection of 3 major shipping routes, making it an ideal location for merchants, smugglers, and anyone else who preferred to conduct business away from government scrutiny. The atmospheric recycling units are making that noise again, Lyrian called from the equipment bay. Which noise? The grinding noise or the noise like a dying whale? Both, actually. I think they're harmonizing. Jakob laughed and made his way through their modest facility. The trading post was small but efficient, built into a natural cave system that provided protection from the planet's frequent dust storms. They'd furnished it with equipment salvaged from derelict ships, creating a comfortable if eclectic living space. Any word from the civilized worlds? He asked, joining Lyrian beside the recycling unit. Torres sent a message yesterday. Apparently, the weapons conspiracy trials have begun on both sides. 17 arrests so far, including 2 cabinet members and a Cathara fleet commander. The prosecution is calling it the largest coordinated corruption case in interspecies history. And us. Officially, we're still wanted criminals. Unofficially, I suspect both governments would prefer we remain wherever we are, well away from their courtrooms. Jakob nodded, surprised to find he wasn't particularly bothered by their exile. The Outer Rim had a freedom that core worlds couldn't offer, the freedom to be judged on your actions rather than your species, your past, or the sins of your government. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Giving up your old life, I mean. Lyrian considered the question while adjusting the recycling unit's settings. I spent 8 years consumed by anger and the need for justice. It was exhausting, carrying that much hate. She looked at him, her violet eyes clear and calm. This is better. Building something new instead of trying to fix something that was broken from the beginning. Their quiet conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a battered cargo hauler, requesting supplies and repairs. Jakob watched as Lyrian greeted the mixed-species crew with easy familiarity, negotiating prices in 3 different languages, while their ship's AI calculated fuel requirements. This was their life now, small, practical, focused on helping travelers rather than fighting old wars. It wasn't the grand gesture of justice they'd imagined when they started their investigation, but it felt more honest somehow. That evening, as twin moons rose over the trading post, Jakob found himself thinking about scars, both the visible ones and those that couldn't be